Quinlan Reese had learned to make herself small. She kept her shoulders curved inward as she navigated the crowded hallways of Lincoln High School, her textbooks clutched against her chest like a shield, her eyes tracking the worn linoleum tiles beneath her Converse sneakers. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed their monotonous drone, punctuating the chaos of voices and slamming lockers that filled the corridor every morning at 7:45. She'd been at Lincoln for exactly 9 days, and already she understood the unspoken rules. Don't make eye contact, don't draw attention, don't give anyone a reason to notice you exist. The morning sun slanted through the tall windows that lined the eastern wall, casting long shadows across the floor. Quinlan moved through one of those shadows now, grateful for any coverage, any reason to blend into the background. She was small, barely 5'3", with a slight build that made her look younger than she was, more fragile than she felt. Her dark hair hung straight to her shoulders, deliberately unstyled, deliberately unremarkable. She wore jeans and a plain grey hoodie, the kind of outfit designed to make her invisible. It wasn't working. "Hey, new girl." The voice came from behind her, male and laden with the particular breed of confidence that came from knowing you stood at the top of the social hierarchy. Quinlan's muscles tensed instinctively, her weight shifting subtly onto the balls of her feet, but she forced herself to keep walking. Her fingers tightened on her textbooks. "Keep moving. Don't engage. Disappear into the crowd." "I'm talking to you." Closer now. She could feel his presence, the way the air seemed to shift when someone moved into your space with purpose. Her peripheral vision caught the details without her having to turn. Tall, broad-shouldered, leather jacket with a varsity football patch. Blonde hair styled with too much product. The kind of guy who'd never been told no in his life. Quinlan reached her locker, number 247, second floor, East Wing, and began working the combination lock. Her hands were steady despite the adrenaline beginning to trickle into her bloodstream. 18 right, 14 left, 29 right. The lock clicked open. She tugged the metal door, the hinges squealing in protest. "Rude much?" The voice was right behind her now. A hand slapped against the locker next to hers, making her jump despite herself. She turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral, and found herself looking up at exactly who she'd expected. Cameron Vance, Lincoln High's golden boy. Quarterback, honor roll, future at some Division I school practically guaranteed. She'd learned his name within her first 2 days. Everyone knew Cameron Vance. "Sorry," Quinlan said quietly. "I'm just trying to get to class." Cameron's smile was sharp, predatory. He wasn't alone. He never was. 2 other guys flanked him. Marcus Delgado on the left, shorter but stocky, with the build of someone who spent serious time in the weight room, and Tyler Brennan on the right, tall and lean, with a mean streak that showed in his eyes. The 3 of them formed a semicircle, blocking her from easy escape. "Just trying to get to class," Cameron mimicked in a high-pitched voice that sounded nothing like her actual tone. "You hear that, guys? New girls got places to be." Marcus laughed right on cue. "Yeah, I heard. Real important stuff, I'm sure." Quinlan felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face carefully blank. She'd done this before. Different school, different bullies, same script. The trick was not to give them what they wanted. Not fear, not anger, not any reaction they could feed on. She glanced past Cameron's shoulder, looking for a teacher, an administrator, anyone with authority who might intervene. The hallway was packed with students, but everyone seemed suddenly very interested in their own lockers, their own conversations, their own phones. No one made eye contact with her. "Excuse me?" Quinlan said, her voice level. She moved to step around Cameron, but he shifted to block her path. The movement was casual, almost lazy, but effective. "What's the rush?" Tyler asked, leaning in closer than necessary. "We're just being friendly. Welcoming you to Lincoln. That's what we do here. We're real welcoming." The warning bell rang, shrill and insistent. Quinlan felt a flash of relief. "I really do need to get to class," she said, and this time she didn't wait for permission. She ducked under Cameron's arm, moving quickly but not running. Never run, never show fear, and disappeared into the flow of students heading toward the stairwell. Behind her, she heard Cameron's laugh, low and promising. "See you around, new girl." Quinlan's first period was American literature in room 203, a cramped classroom on the second floor that smelled like old books and dry erase markers. She slid into a desk near the back corner, the one closest to the window, and let out a slow breath. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been. The adrenaline was still there, humming through her veins, making her fingers tingle. She pressed her palms flat against the desk, feeling the cool laminate surface, grounding herself in the sensation. The teacher, Mrs. Palmer, 50s, tired eyes, silver hair pulled into a practical bun, was already at the board writing the day's agenda in neat print. Other students filtered in, chatting, laughing, oblivious. Quinlan pulled out her notebook and pen, focused on looking busy, looking boring, looking like nothing special. She'd been doing this for 3 years now, moving, starting over, making herself invisible. It never lasted as long as she hoped. The morning passed in the usual blur of classes and hallway transitions. Quinlan kept her head down, spoke only when called on, ate lunch alone at a small table near the cafeteria's back exit. The cafeteria was exactly what she'd expected. Too loud, too crowded, smelling like industrial pizza and cleaning solution. Long tables filled with tight-knit groups who'd known each other since elementary school. She wasn't part of any of those groups. She wouldn't be. She'd chosen the exit table deliberately, easy escape route if things got complicated. Clear view of the room so she couldn't be surprised. Old habits. The kind Uncle Ray had drilled into her when she was 12. Always know where the exits are, always keep your back to the wall, always stay aware of your surroundings. Uncle Ray. The thought of him made her chest ache, sharp and sudden. 3 years gone now, and she still sometimes forgot, still reached for her phone to text him before remembering. The cancer had been quick at least, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. He'd made her promise those last few weeks. Made her swear on everything they'd built together. "Promise me, Quinn, no more fighting. You're done with that life. You hear me? Done. You're too smart, too good. You go to school, you get your education, you make something better of yourself. Let the past stay in the past." She'd promised, she'd meant it, and she'd kept it for 3 years, even when it was hard, even when every instinct screamed at her to defend herself, to fight back, to show them what she was capable of, because Uncle Ray had saved her when no one else would, had taken in a 15-year-old with a reputation and a record, and had given her a second chance. The least she could do was honor his dying wish, even if it meant enduring people like Cameron Vance. Quinlan finished her sandwich, peanut butter and jelly packed from home, and pulled out her phone. The screen showed a wallpaper photo of her and Uncle Ray at his gym, both of them grinning, her holding up a trophy from her last tournament. She'd been 15, arrogant, riding high on 3 straight wins. She'd thought she was invincible. She knew better now. The rest of the day passed without major incident. Cameron and his friends were in her 5th period chemistry class, unfortunately, but they mostly ignored her, content to crack jokes and flirt with the girls who sat near them. Quinlan copied notes, answered questions when Mr. Richardson called on her, kept herself unremarkable. The final bell rang at 3:15. Students flooded the hallways, heading for the parking lot, the buses, the various after-school activities that filled the bulletin boards with bright flyers. Quinlan walked to her locker, exchanged her textbooks for homework assignments, and shouldered her backpack. The halls were thinning out now, most people eager to escape. She preferred it this way: fewer witnesses, fewer interactions, fewer chances for things to go wrong. She was halfway down the stairs when someone bumped her shoulder. Hard. Not accidental. Quinlan stumbled, catching herself on the railing. Her backpack swung, the weight pulling her off balance for a second before she found her footing. She looked up, already knowing who she'd see. Marcus Delgado grinned down at her from 2 steps above. "Oh, sorry. Didn't see you there, you're so small." Tyler appeared beside him, matching grin. "Yeah, tiny, like a mouse, a quiet little mouse." Quinlan's fingers tightened on the railing. She could feel the familiar sensation building in her chest, the urge to move, to strike, to put both of them on the ground before they understood what was happening. It would be easy. Marcus's weight was too far forward, one sweep, and he'd tumble down the stairs. Tyler's hands were in his pockets. He'd never get them out in time to defend himself. Easy, and completely against everything she'd promised. "My fault," Quinlan said instead, her voice steady. "I should watch where I'm going." She moved past them, continuing down the stairs, feeling their eyes on her back, waiting for another shove, another taunt. It didn't come. Behind her, she heard Marcus say something she couldn't quite catch, followed by Tyler's laughter. The parking lot was nearly empty. Quinlan walked to the bike rack near the school's west entrance, unlocked her 10-speed, second-hand, but reliable, and swung her leg over the seat. The September afternoon was warm, the air still heavy with late summer heat. She pedaled out of the lot, passing clusters of students waiting for rides, heading toward the street that would take her to the small apartment she shared with her aunt. Aunt Claire was Uncle Ray's sister, and she'd taken Quinlan in after the funeral without hesitation. But their relationship was strained. Claire worked long hours as a nurse at County General, and when she was home, she was usually too exhausted for much conversation. They existed in parallel, sharing space but not lives. It was fine. Quinlan had learned not to expect more. The apartment was in a complex called Riverside Terrace, though there was no river and not much terrace to speak of, just a cluster of 2-story buildings with peeling paint and a parking lot riddled with potholes. Quinlan locked her bike to the rack outside Building C, climbed the external stairs to the 2nd floor, and let herself into Unit 214. The living room was small and dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The furniture was dated. A sagging couch, a coffee table with water rings, a TV on a stand that wobbled if you breathed on it wrong. Quinlan dropped her backpack by the door, kicked off her shoes and headed for her room. It was barely big enough for her twin bed and a desk, but it was hers. The walls were bare except for a single framed photo, her and Uncle Ray at the gym. She'd hung it the day she moved in and hadn't added anything since. No posters, no decorations, no personal touches that might make her feel too settled. This was temporary, like everything else in her life. Quinlan pulled out her homework, spreading it across the desk. Chemistry problems, algebra equations, an essay for American literature. She worked methodically, the familiar rhythms of academic work soothing in their predictability. This was something she could control. This was something that made sense. An hour passed, then another. The light outside her window shifted from gold to orange to the deep blue of early evening. Quinlan finished her homework, closed her textbooks, and stood to stretch. Her muscles felt tight, coiled. She needed to move. The gym bag sat in her closet, hidden behind a box of winter clothes. Quinlan pulled it out slowly, unzipped it, looked at the contents she hadn't touched in 3 years. Hand wraps, fingerless gloves, her old GI with the black belt still folded inside. Uncle Ray's gym had been Brazilian jiu-jitsu focused, but he'd trained her in boxing too. Muay Thai, a little wrestling. She'd been good at all of it. More than good. She closed the bag without touching anything inside and shoved it back into the closet. The following Monday arrived with heavy clouds and the promise of rain. Quinlan, dressed in the same uniform of jeans and hoodie, grabbed her backpack and headed out before Aunt Claire woke up. The ride to school was longer in the early morning. Fewer cars, more time to think. She tried not to, Lincoln High looked different in the pre-dawn light, less intimidating somehow. The building was old, brick and concrete, with narrow windows and a flat roof that probably leaked in heavy rain. The front entrance was a set of double doors beneath an overhang carved with Lincoln High School, and the year it was built, 1963. Quinlan locked her bike, shouldered her bag, and walked inside. The hallways were nearly empty. She reached her locker without incident, worked the combination, and was pulling out her first period textbook when she felt someone approach. Not aggressive, but deliberate. She tensed, preparing herself, but when she turned, it wasn't Cameron or his crew. It was a girl. She was tall, taller than Quinlan by at least 6 inches, with warm brown skin and dark curls pulled into a high ponytail. She wore jeans and a Lincoln High volleyball t-shirt, and her expression was friendly, open, curious. "Hey," the girl said. "You're Quinlan, right?" "The new transfer?" Quinlan nodded slowly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nobody approached her without a reason. "I'm Keiko," the girl continued. "Keiko Chen. I'm on student council. We try to welcome new people, make sure everyone's settling in okay. How are you liking Lincoln so far?" "It's fine," Quinlan said carefully. Standard response. Non-committal. Keiko smiled, and it seemed genuine. "That's the most unenthusiastic fine I've heard in a while. Look, I know starting at a new school is rough. If you need someone to show you around or just want someone to eat lunch with, I'm usually in the cafeteria at the table by the windows. Open invitation." Quinlan felt something unexpected, a flicker of hope, but she tamped it down immediately. Getting close to people meant they could be used against you, meant they could become targets. "Thanks," she said. "I appreciate it." "Cool." Keiko seemed about to say more when voices echoed down the hall. Cameron's unmistakable laugh, followed by Tyler's responding bellow. Keiko's expression shifted just slightly, something harder entering her eyes. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice. "I saw what happened last week. Cameron and his guys messing with you." Quinlan's jaw tightened. "It's fine. I can handle it." "I'm sure you can," Keiko said, "but you shouldn't have to." "Nobody should. If they keep bothering you, tell someone. A teacher, the principal, anyone." The adults don't care, Quinlan thought, but didn't say. They never do. "I will," she lied. "Thanks." Keiko looked like she wanted to press the issue but thought better of it. "Remember, lunch, windows table, any time." She turned and walked away, ponytail swinging, just as Cameron and his friends rounded the corner. Cameron saw Quinlan immediately. His eyes lit up with something mean. "There she is," he said, loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. More students were arriving now, filtering in through the entrance, filling the space with noise and movement. "Little mouse girl, you find your cheese yet?" Marcus and Tyler laughed. Quinlan closed her locker and turned to leave, but Cameron stepped into her path. "What, no greeting? No good morning, Cameron? That's pretty rude, Mouse." Quinlan met his eyes for just a second, long enough to show she wasn't afraid, not long enough to be a challenge. "Excuse me," she said quietly, and moved to go around him. Cameron let her pass this time, but as she walked away, he called after her. "You know what we call girls who can't be bothered to be friendly? We call them bitches. But you're too small to be a bitch. You're just a scared little mouse." Laughter followed her down the hall. Quinlan kept walking, her pace steady, her expression neutral. The first bell rang. Students scattered toward their respective classrooms. Quinlan climbed the stairs to the second floor, entered room 203, and took her seat by the window. Mrs. Palmer was discussing symbolism in The Great Gatsby. Quinlan copied notes, raised her hand twice to answer questions, and tried to focus on the green light at the end of Daisy's dock instead of the tightness in her chest. The pattern established itself over the following days. Cameron and his friends would find her, in the hallway between classes, at her locker, occasionally in the cafeteria, and they'd say something designed to humiliate, to provoke, to get a reaction. Mouse girl, scaredy cat, wallflower, loser. Sometimes it was just words. Sometimes it was physical. Books knocked from her hands, shoulder checks that sent her stumbling, a foot stuck out to trip her. Quinlan never reacted. She picked up her books. She steadied herself. She kept walking. She made herself smaller, quieter, more invisible. It wasn't working. If anything, her refusal to engage seemed to make them more determined. On Wednesday of that second week, Marcus accidentally knocked her lunch tray out of her hands in the cafeteria. It crashed to the floor in a spectacular mess of spaghetti sauce, milk, and shattered plate. The cafeteria went quiet for exactly 3 seconds before erupting in laughter and jeers. Quinlan knelt to clean it up, her face burning, while Cameron's voice carried over the noise. "Oops." Butterfingers. "You okay down there, Mouse?" A cafeteria worker appeared with a mop and a weary expression. "It's okay, hun," she said to Quinlan. "I got it. Go sit down." But Quinlan helped clean anyway, picking up the larger pieces, ignoring the stares and whispers. When she finally made it to an empty table, she had no lunch and no appetite left anyway. Keiko appeared with an extra sandwich. "Here," she said, setting it down. "Turkey and Swiss. I always pack extra." Quinlan looked up at her, surprised. "You don't have to—" "I know," Keiko interrupted, "but I'm going to. And I'm going to sit here if that's okay with you." It wasn't a question, not really. Keiko sat, unwrapping her own sandwich, and began talking about volleyball practice, about the upcoming game against Roosevelt, about the history test she was dreading. Normal things, human things. After a few minutes, Quinlan found herself responding, offering her own observations, almost forgetting the humiliation of 10 minutes ago. Almost. That night, Quinlan lay in bed, staring at her ceiling, unable to sleep. Her phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. She wanted to text someone, talk to someone, but there was no one. Aunt Claire was working a double. Uncle Ray was gone. Her friends from before, from her old life, existed in a world she'd left behind. She thought about Cameron Vance, about the particular gleam in his eyes when he'd watched her scramble for her lunch. She thought about the other students who'd laughed, or looked away, or done nothing. She thought about the teachers who walked past without intervening, who saw but chose not to see. She thought about the promise she'd made to Uncle Ray. The rain started sometime after midnight, a steady drumming against the window that should have been soothing, but wasn't. By the third week, Cameron had escalated from casual cruelty to targeted campaign. Someone, everyone knew it was him, though no one could prove it, spray-painted "Mouse" on her locker in dripping red letters. Quinlan found it before first period, surrounded by gawking students with their phones out, recording. The vice principal, Mr. Peterson, appeared with a maintenance worker. "Who did this?" he demanded, looking around at the crowd. No one answered. No one made eye contact. "Fine," he said. "We'll check the security cameras. This is vandalism, and it won't be tolerated." But the cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that night. Convenient. Quinlan cleaned out her locker while the maintenance worker painted over the graffiti. Her hands were steady, but inside, something was beginning to crack. In chemistry class, Tyler knocked her textbook off her desk 3 times in 15 minutes. Mr. Richardson was focused on a demonstration at the front and didn't notice. The third time, when Quinlan bent to pick it up, Tyler whispered, "You know what your problem is, Mouse. You're boring. You don't fight back. You don't cry. You're just nothing." Quinlan straightened, textbook in hand, and met his eyes. For just a moment she let him see something, a flash of the person she used to be, the fighter, the girl who'd left opponents bloodied and broken on the mat. Tyler's smile faltered, but then Cameron called his name from across the room, and the moment passed. After school, Quinlan pedalled home through a cold drizzle, her clothes damp by the time she reached Riverside Terrace. She locked her bike, climbed the stairs, and let herself into the empty apartment. Aunt Claire had left a note on the counter. Working late. Leftover casserole in fridge. C. Quinlan heated the casserole without tasting it, ate mechanically, and returned to her room. She pulled out her homework but couldn't focus. The words on the page blurred together, meaningless. She opened her closet and stared at the gym bag. 3 years. She'd lasted 3 years. That had to count for something. Uncle Ray would understand that she'd tried, wouldn't he? That she'd done her best to keep her promise. Number. She closed the closet door firmly. A promise was a promise. She could endure this. She'd endured worse. The 4th week brought a new development: social media. Someone, definitely Cameron's crowd, created an Instagram account called Mouse_Watch, dedicated to posting unflattering photos of Quinlan. Pictures of her walking alone, eating alone, sitting alone. Captions mocking her clothes, her hair, her existence. The account had 80 followers by lunchtime on Monday, 120 by end of day. Keiko found her in the library during study hall. "You saw it," she said. Not a question. Quinlan nodded. She'd seen it. She'd reported it to Instagram, but that would take time, if it worked at all. "This is beyond mean," Keiko said, her voice tight with anger. "This is harassment. You need to tell someone, the principal, the police, someone." "And say what?" Quinlan asked quietly. "That someone's posting public photos?" "That's not illegal. That I'm being called names? They'll tell me to ignore it. Everyone always says ignore it." "This is more than names." "It's fine," Quinlan interrupted. "I'm handling it." Keiko's expression was frustrated, helpless. "You keep saying that, but you shouldn't have to handle it alone." "But I am alone," Quinlan thought. "That's the whole point. That's how I stay safe." She'd stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, too exposed. She'd started hiding in the library, or in an empty classroom, or outside when the weather allowed. Anywhere she could be invisible. But invisibility was no longer an option. Cameron had decided she was his project, his entertainment. He found her wherever she went. On Thursday afternoon, Quinlan was at her locker when Cameron appeared with his entire crew, not just Marcus and Tyler, but 4 other guys from the football team. They formed a wall around her, blocking her in. "Heard you've been avoiding us, Mouse," Cameron said. His smile was sharp enough to cut. "That's not very friendly. We just want to get to know you better." Quinlan's heart rate kicked up, but her expression stayed neutral. "I need to get to class." "Class can wait," Tyler said. "We want to talk." "About what?" The question came out before Quinlan could stop it. Cameron leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. "About why you're such a stuck-up little bitch. You think you're better than us? Walking around like you're too good to talk to anybody? That's what we want to know." The hallway was full of people. Teachers walked past. Students watched from a safe distance. Phones out, recording. No one intervened. No one said anything. They all just watched. Quinlan felt something shift inside her chest. Something dark and old and dangerous. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, hidden by her sleeves. Her weight settled into her stance, balanced, ready. She could put Cameron on the ground in under 3 seconds. Marcus and Tyler would be too shocked to react. The others would scatter. 3 seconds. That's all it would take. "I asked you a question," Cameron said, his voice dropping to something uglier. "Are you deaf and stupid?" "Leave me alone," Quinlan said quietly. Each word was carefully controlled, shaped by the tension building in her jaw. "Or what?" Cameron laughed. "What are you gonna do, Mouse? Squeak at us?" The group laughed. Quinlan looked past Cameron's shoulder and saw Keiko in the crowd, her expression stricken, her phone out, but not recording, calling someone maybe, a teacher, security. It wouldn't matter. By the time anyone with authority arrived, this would be over. Nothing, Quinlan said finally. I'm going to do nothing. She turned away, putting her back to them, stupid, dangerous but necessary, and Cameron let her go. His laughter followed her down the hall, along with his parting shot. That's right, Mouse. Run away. That's all you're good for. Quinlan made it to the bathroom before her hands started shaking. She locked herself in a stall, pressed her palms against the cool metal walls, and breathed through the adrenaline crash. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her vision swam. She wanted to hit something so badly her knuckles ached with it. But she didn't. She breathed, counted to 10, to 20, to 30, until her hands steadied and her heartbeat slowed to something approaching normal. A promise was a promise, even when it was killing her. Friday afternoon, the final bell rang like a reprieve. Quinlan gathered her books and headed for her locker, moving fast, wanting to get out before Cameron's crew found her again. She was shoving textbooks into her backpack when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, already bracing herself, but it wasn't Cameron, it was Keiko, and she wasn't alone. The boy with her was tall, nearly 6 feet, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and clear grey eyes. He wore jeans and a faded band t-shirt, and he carried himself with an easy confidence that didn't feel aggressive or threatening, just comfortable, sure of his space in the world. "Quinlan," Keiko said, "this is my friend Dashiell." "Dash, this is Quinlan Reese." Dashiell offered a small smile. "Hey, I've heard a lot about you." "All terrible, I'm sure," Quinlan said before she could stop herself. To her surprise, Dashiell laughed. "Actually, all interesting. Keiko says you're smart, keep to yourself, and have somehow managed to become Cameron Vance's personal target for harassment. That last one's practically a badge of honor. Cameron's an asshole to anyone with actual personality." Quinlan felt herself relax infinitesimally. "He seems to think I'm boring." "Boring people don't get this much attention," Dashiell said. "Trust me, I've been boring. It's way less eventful." Keiko nudged his shoulder. "Dash is in your chem class. He sits in the back. That's probably why you haven't noticed him." "I noticed," Quinlan said, then felt her face heat. "I mean, I noticed there are other people in the class. Obviously, not specifically." She stopped, aware she was making it worse. Dashiell's smile widened. "It's cool. I'm not offended. I do sit in the back on purpose. Mr. Richardson's demonstrations are way more interesting from that angle." "We're going to get food," Keiko said. "Pizza place down on Main Street. You should come with us." Quinlan's immediate instinct was to refuse. Getting close to people was dangerous, but Keiko's expression was hopeful, and Dashiell's was open, and she was so tired of eating alone. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Yeah, I could eat pizza." They walked to Main Street together, a distance of about 6 blocks from school. The pizza place was called Salvatore's, and it looked like it had been there since the 70s. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, plastic plants that had faded to an unfortunate shade of greyish-green. But it smelled amazing. All garlic and yeast and melted cheese. They ordered a large pepperoni and claimed a booth in the back. Keiko slid in on one side, Quinlan on the other, and Dashiell hesitated before sitting next to Quinlan. Close, but not touching. Respectful. "So," Keiko said once they'd gotten their drinks. "Real talk. What's your deal, Quinlan Reese?" "My deal?" "Yeah. Where are you from? Why'd you transfer to Lincoln? What's your tragic backstory?" "Keiko," Dashiell said, his tone warning. "Subtle." "I'm extremely subtle," Keiko countered. "This is me being subtle." Despite everything, Quinlan found herself smiling. "I'm from Colorado originally, Denver area. I've been living here with my aunt for a few years now. No tragic backstory. Just regular boring life stuff." It was mostly true. The parts that weren't, she'd learned to leave out. "Colorado's cool," Dashiell said. "I've never been. But I've heard it's beautiful. The mountains are, Quinlan agreed. The rest is pretty normal. The pizza arrived, hot and greasy and perfect. They ate and talked about safe things, classes, teachers, the upcoming homecoming dance that Quinlan hadn't planned on attending. Keiko told stories about volleyball practice. Dashiell explained his obsession with vintage comic books. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of normal interaction Quinlan had almost forgotten existed. "Okay, real question," Keiko said eventually, pointing a pizza crust at Quinlan. "Why do you let Cameron and his goons treat you like that?" The comfortable mood shattered. Quinlan set down her slice. "I don't let them. They just do it. But you don't fight back. You don't tell anyone. You just take it." "What else am I supposed to do?" Quinlan asked, hearing the edge in her own voice. "Stand up for yourself," Keiko said. "Report them. Get them in trouble. Make them face consequences." "You really think that would work?" Quinlan shook her head. "No teacher cares. No administrator wants to deal with it. Cameron's dad is, some big donor. His family probably funds half the sports programs. Nobody's going to touch him." "That's not—" Keiko started, but Dashiell interrupted. "She's not wrong," he said quietly. "Cameron's gotten away with shit for years. Remember what he did to Marcus Chen when we were sophomores? That was way worse than some name-calling, and he got, a one-day suspension." "Who's Marcus Chen?" Quinlan asked. "My cousin," Keiko said, her expression darkening. "Cameron decided Marcus was gay, which he is. But that's not the point, and made his life hell for 3 months. Posted fake profiles, spread rumors, even shoved him down the bleachers during a pep rally. Marcus transferred schools." "Jesus," Quinlan muttered. "Yeah," Dashiell said, "so we get it. The system doesn't work for people like us, but that doesn't mean you have to just endure it." "What else is there?" Quinlan asked. "You could ignore them so hard they get bored," Keiko suggested. "You could make yourself so boring they lose interest." "I'm trying that. It's not working." "You could fight back," Dashiell said. Both girls turned to look at him. He shrugged. "I'm not saying violence. But there are other ways to fight. Be loud. Make a scene. Don't let them corner you alone. Stay with people. Make it public and embarrassing for them." "That requires having people to stay with," Quinlan pointed out. "You have us now," Keiko said, "if you want." The offer hung in the air, genuine and terrifying. Quinlan felt her throat tighten. "I don't want to drag you into this. Cameron already has it out for me. If you associate with me—" "We're not scared of Cameron Vance," Keiko interrupted. "Let him try something." "I'll spike a volleyball at his face," Dashiell snorted. "Very Gandhi of you." "Gandhi would understand," Keiko said primly. "Sometimes violence is necessary." They argued good-naturedly about whether Gandhi would approve of using sports equipment as weapons. Quinlan listened, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in her chest, something that might have been hope, or might have been the beginning of friendship. They finished the pizza and walked back towards school where they'd all left bikes. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Main Street was quiet, most shops already closed for the evening. "Same time next Friday?" Keiko asked as they reached the bike racks. "Yeah," Quinlan said. "I'd like that." "Cool." Keiko unlocked her bike, a bright blue road bike with a basket on the front. "Also, you should sit with us at lunch. The table by the windows, remember? There's like 6 of us usually. Good people. You'd fit in." "I'll think about it," Quinlan said, which was not quite a yes, but not quite a no. Dashiell unlocked his bike, a beat-up mountain bike with worn tire treads, and paused before mounting. "Hey, Quinlan, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this whole Cameron situation better than I would. I'd have probably done something stupid by now." "The secret is compartmentalizing trauma," Quinlan said dryly. Dashiell laughed. "Same, though. Anyway, see you Monday. Chem class, right?" "Right. See you." She watched them ride away, still chatting, Keiko's ponytail bouncing with each pedal stroke. Then she unlocked her own bike and headed for Riverside Terrace. That night, Aunt Claire was actually home for dinner. She'd picked up Chinese takeout, lo mein and orange chicken, and they ate together at the small kitchen table. It was the first time they'd shared a meal in weeks. "How's school?" Claire asked, picking at her chicken with chopsticks. "Fine," Quinlan said automatically. "Making any friends?" Quinlan thought about Keiko and Dashiell, about pizza and easy laughter. "Maybe," she admitted. "There are a couple people who are nice." Claire smiled, and for a moment she looked less exhausted, less worn down. "Good. That's good, Quinn. You need friends. You need to be a normal teenager, do normal teenager things. If only it were that simple," Quinlan thought. But she nodded and ate her noodles, and didn't mention Cameron Vance or spray-painted lockers, or the weight of trying to stay invisible in a world determined to see her. After dinner, she retreated to her room and pulled out her phone. The mouse_watch account was still up, still posting. New photos from today, her walking alone, her at her locker, her leaving school. The captions were getting meaner. Does she own any clothes that aren't grey? Bet she smells like wet dog. How is someone this boring even real? Quinlan reported each post methodically, knowing it wouldn't matter. Then she blocked the account, and everyone who followed it, that she recognized. It was a small act of defiance, meaningless in the grand scheme, but it made her feel fractionally less powerless. She was about to put the phone down when it buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Dashiell. Keiko gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Anyway, I wanted to say I meant what I said earlier. You're tougher than you think." Dee Quinlan stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Thanks. That actually helps." -Q quote. His response came almost immediately. Quote, "Anytime," quote. "Also, if you ever want to talk or whatever, I'm around," quote, "No pressure though," quote. She saved his number and set the phone on her nightstand. The warm feeling in her chest was back, persistent, refusing to be ignored. Maybe having people wasn't as dangerous as she thought. Maybe it was worth the risk. Monday morning arrived cold and grey, the first real taste of autumn. Quinlan, dressed in jeans and a dark blue hoodie, different from her usual grey, a small rebellion, and rode to school through the chill. The parking lot was already filling when she arrived, students clustering around cars, reluctant to go inside. Quinlan locked her bike and headed for the entrance. She was halfway across the lot when someone called her name. "Quinlan, wait up!" She turned to see Dashiell jogging toward her, backpack bouncing. He was slightly out of breath when he reached her, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Hey," he said. "I was hoping I'd catch you. Want to walk in together?" It was such a simple thing, such a normal thing, but Quinlan felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Sure," she managed. "Yeah." They walked toward the entrance side by side. Other students glanced their way, curious, but no one said anything. Quinlan kept waiting for Cameron to appear, to make some comment about her finding a friend, but the hallways were surprisingly calm. "You should know," Dashiell said as they reached her locker. "Cameron and his crew got called to Peterson's office first thing. Someone, and I'm not saying who, but her name rhymes with Baco, sent a very detailed email over the weekend, documenting every incident of harassment she's witnessed, with dates, times, and locations. Also attached links to the mouse_watch account before it mysteriously vanished." "It got taken down?" Quinlan asked, surprised. "Sometime yesterday, Instagram finally responded to all those reports. Funny how fast they move when someone with connections, say, a student council member whose mom is on the school board, makes noise about it." "Keiko did that. Keiko's been planning it all weekend." "She's terrifying when she's motivated, in the best way." Quinlan felt her eyes burning. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in the middle of the hallway. That's really kind of her." "She's good people," Dashiell agreed. "So am I, for the record. In case you were wondering, I'm very good people." Quinlan laughed despite herself. Modest, too. Extremely. It's my best quality. The warning bell rang. Students began moving toward their classrooms with varying levels of urgency. Dashiell shifted his backpack. I'll see you at lunch. Windows table? Yeah, Quinlan said. Lunch. I'll be there. His smile was bright and genuine. Excellent. Prepare yourself for meeting the rest of the crew. They're weird, but in good ways. He walked off toward his first period class, and Quinlan watched him go, feeling something shift in her chest. Something that felt like the opposite of the heaviness she'd been carrying. First period passed uneventfully. Mrs. Palmer discussed The Great Gatsby's ending, and Quinlan contributed to the discussion more than usual. Second period was algebra, which she was good at but found tedious. Third period was study hall, which she spent actually studying instead of hiding in the library. And then came lunch. Quinlan walked into the cafeteria with her brown bag lunch and immediately spotted Keiko's ponytail at the table by the windows. 5 other people sat around her, laughing at something someone had said. Quinlan's steps slowed. This was it, the moment of commitment. She could still turn around, find an empty classroom, eat alone like she'd been doing. But she'd promised she'd try. She walked to the table. Keiko saw her coming and waved enthusiastically. Quinlan, you came. Guys, this is Quinlan. Quinlan, this is everyone. The introductions came in a blur. Anya, a quiet girl with purple-streaked hair who was apparently some kind of art prodigy. Marcus, different Marcus, not the bully, who was obsessed with chess and spoke in rapid-fire sentences. Priya, who ran the school newspaper and had opinions about everything. Jordan, who was non-binary and played in a punk band and wore a leather jacket covered in pins. And Dashiell, who grinned at her from across the table. Sit, Keiko commanded, patting the empty seat next to her. Tell us about yourself. Keiko says you're mysteriously private. I said she keeps to herself, Keiko corrected, which is allowed, but boring, Priya added. We want details. Who are you, Quinlan Reese? They were overwhelming, loud, genuinely interested. Quinlan found herself answering their questions, safe versions, edited versions, but answers nonetheless. Yes, she'd lived in Colorado. No, she didn't have siblings. Yes, she liked reading. No, she wasn't involved in any clubs yet. Maybe she'd consider it. The conversation flowed easily around her. They argued about whether the new Marvel movie was any good, debated the best pizza toppings, teased each other with the comfort of long friendship. And they included her, asking her opinion, laughing at her dry observations, making space for her at their table and in their circle. For the first time since starting at Lincoln High, Quinlan felt like maybe she could belong. Cameron and his crew entered the cafeteria about halfway through lunch. Quinlan saw them and felt her shoulders tense automatically, but Cameron didn't even glance her way. He looked angry, tight-lipped, and when Marcus Delgado tried to say something to him, Cameron snapped a response that made Marcus back off. Peterson must have reamed them out pretty good, Jordan observed, following Quinlan's gaze. Cameron looks like he ate something sour. Good, Keiko said firmly. He deserves worse. But it's a start. The rest of the lunch period passed without incident. When the bell rang, Quinlan gathered her trash and stood with the others. Dashiell fell into step beside her as they left the cafeteria. So, he asked, verdict on the crew? They're loud, Quinlan said. Accurate. And overwhelming. Also accurate. And I think I like them, she finished quietly. Dashiell's smile was soft. Good. They like you too. I can tell. Chemistry class that afternoon was the first time Cameron had to be in the same room with her since whatever happened in Peterson's office. He walked in late, slammed his books on his desk, and didn't look at her once during the entire period. Tyler and the other football players followed his lead. It was the quietest the class had ever been. After school, Quinlan went to her locker to find a note shoved through the vents. She pulled it out, unfolded it, and read, "Thanks for getting us in trouble, bitch." This isn't over. C. Vi. Her hands tightened on the paper, crumpling it. So much for Peterson's intervention making a difference. What's that? Quinlan turned to find Keiko and Dashiell approaching. She held out the note wordlessly. Dashiell read it, his expression darkening. He's such a child. He gets in trouble for harassing you, and his response is to threaten you more? We should report this, Keiko said. And say what? Quinlan asked. It's not signed. The initials could mean anything. And even if we could prove it was him, what would it accomplish? More meetings with Peterson? More slaps on the wrist? He's right. This isn't over. He's not going to stop just because he got a talking to. So what do we do? Keiko asked, frustrated. I handle it, Quinlan said. Like I've been handling it. By letting him walk all over you? Dashiell's tone was sharper than she'd heard before. That's not handling it. That's enduring it. There's a difference. What else is there? Quinlan heard her own voice rising, felt the frustration and fear she'd been suppressing for weeks bubbling to the surface. What do you want me to do? Fight him, get myself expelled, prove I'm exactly what people think I am. She'd said too much. Both Keiko and Dashiell were staring at her, confused. What people think you are? Keiko asked carefully. What does that mean? Quinlan shook her head, already regretting her outburst. Nothing. Forget it, I'll figure it out. She shoved the crumpled note in her pocket, grabbed her backpack, and walked away before they could ask more questions. Behind her, she heard Dashiell say, "Should we?" But Keiko's response was too quiet to hear. Quinlan made it outside, unlocked her bike with shaking hands, and pedaled home faster than necessary. The cold air stung her lungs. Her legs burned. She didn't slow down until she reached Riverside Terrace, and even then she took the stairs 2 at a time, desperate to be alone, to be behind a locked door where no one could see her fall apart. She made it to her room, closed the door, and sat on the floor with her back against the bed. Her breathing was too fast, too shallow. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The pressure in her chest felt like it might crack her ribs from the inside. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to Dashiell's number, then set it down without calling. What would she even say? That she was losing control? That she could feel herself breaking? That every day was getting harder? The weight of pretending to be helpless getting heavier? The promise she'd made to Uncle Ray feeling more impossible to keep? Her eyes fell on the gym bag in her closet. She could see the corner of it, peeking out from behind the box. 3 years. She'd kept the promise for 3 years. That should be enough. Uncle Ray would understand. He'd understand that sometimes circumstances changed, that sometimes you had to adapt, that sometimes... No. A promise was a promise. She'd given her word to a dying man who'd saved her life. She wouldn't break it over someone like Cameron Vance, even if it killed her. The following days established a new normal. Quinlan ate lunch with Keiko's group every day. She walked to and from classes with Dashiell when their schedules aligned. She participated more in class discussions. She was visible, present, part of something. Cameron and his friends kept their distance mostly. There were still incidents, shoulder checks in crowded hallways, muttered insults just loud enough for her to hear, textbooks accidentally knocked off her desk. But it was muted, cautious. Peterson had put them on notice, and even if they didn't respect Quinlan, they apparently respected the threat of consequences enough to dial it back. For 2 weeks things were almost normal. Quinlan should have known it wouldn't last. The attack came on a Thursday evening, just after sunset. Quinlan was leaving the library, the public library downtown, not the school one, where she'd been working on a research paper. Her bike was locked at the rack out front. The street was quiet. Most businesses already closed for the night. She was unlocking her bike when they appeared. Cameron, Marcus Delgado, Tyler, and 2 others she recognized from the football team, 5 of them surrounding her, cutting off escape routes. Cameron's smile was mean and ugly in the dim streetlight. Well, well, he said, look who we found. All alone. No teachers, no friends, just you and us, Mouse. Quinlan's heart rate kicked up instantly, adrenaline flooding her system. She straightened slowly, leaving the bike locked, evaluating her options. 5 against 1, trained 1, but they didn't know that. If she ran, they'd chase her. If she called for help, they'd probably scatter. But what if they didn't? "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "What do we want?" Cameron stepped closer. "We want you to know that you're not safe. We want you to understand that getting us in trouble was a mistake. We want you to remember that when we decide we're done with you, not some vice principal." "I didn't get you in trouble," Quinlan said. "You did that yourself." Wrong thing to say. Cameron's expression darkened. "You think you're smart? You think you're better than us? You're nothing, Mouse. You're a scared little girl playing dress-up at being tough." "If you're going to do something, do it," Quinlan said, surprised by her own voice. "I'm tired of the theatrics." That caught them off guard. Marcus glanced at Cameron, uncertain. Tyler laughed nervously. One of the others shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Cameron recovered quickly. "Brave words." "Let's see how brave you really are." He reached out to shove her. Quinlan's body reacted before her brain could stop it. 3 years of suppression, 3 years of forced passivity, 3 years of pretending she didn't know how to defend herself, all of it shattered in that instant. She didn't just dodge the shove. She redirected it, grabbed Cameron's wrist, used his momentum against him, and put him face first into the brick wall of the library. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but hard enough to stun. The entire movement took less than 2 seconds. Cameron slumped against the wall, dazed. The other 4 stared at her, shocked. "Jesus Christ," Tyler breathed. Quinlan released Cameron and stepped back, her heart pounding. What had she done? She'd broken her promise. She'd revealed herself. Cameron turned around, nose bleeding, eyes wild with rage and humiliation. "You bitch! You're dead!" He charged at her. No finesse, just fury. Quinlan sidestepped easily, too easily, showing training she shouldn't have. And Cameron stumbled past her, off balance. Marcus moved next, trying to grab her from behind. Quinlan dropped her weight, slipped out of his grip, and swept his legs. He went down hard on the concrete. "Stop," she thought desperately. "Stop before you can't stop." But Tyler was already coming at her, and her body moved without permission, blocking his punch, countering with a short jab to his solar plexus that left him gasping for air. The other 2 hung back, suddenly uncertain if they wanted any part of this. Cameron was up again, blood streaming from his nose, looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "What the fuck are you?" "Someone who wants to be left alone," Quinlan said. Her voice was shaking now, the adrenaline turning to something colder, darker. "Someone who's been trying really hard not to hurt anyone. You should go." "We're not." Cameron started, but headlights appeared at the end of the block, a car pulling into the library's parking lot. Cameron looked at the car, looked at Quinlan, looked at Marcus and Tyler picking themselves up off the ground. "This isn't over," he spit. They scattered, all 5 of them, running into the darkness, leaving Quinlan standing alone by her bike, shaking, bleeding adrenaline and regret in equal measure. The car parked, and a middle-aged woman got out, noticed Quinlan, waved in a friendly way. "Evening? Library still open?" "Just closed," Quinlan managed. "Sorry." The woman shrugged and got back in her car. Quinlan waited until she drove away, then sank down to sit on the curb. Her hands were trembling violently now, post-adrenaline crash hitting hard. She'd done it. She'd broken her promise. She'd used violence. She'd become exactly what Uncle Ray had begged her not to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dashiell. "Hey, working on that chem lab tonight or tomorrow?" Quinlan stared at the message, at the normalcy of it, at the mundane question about homework from someone who thought he knew her. But he didn't know her. Nobody did. Nobody knew what she was capable of, what she'd done, what she'd just done again. She unlocked her bike and rode home in the dark, replaying those 2 seconds over and over. The feel of Cameron's wrist in her grip, the practiced efficiency of the throw, the muscle memory that had taken over despite 3 years of disuse. Uncle Ray's voice in her head. "Promise me, Quinn." No more fighting. She'd promised, and she'd broken it. That night she didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at her ceiling, waiting for consequences, waiting for her phone to ring with Cameron claiming assault, waiting for police to knock on the door, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't. Not that night. Friday morning came, grey and cold. Quinlan dragged herself out of bed, got ready for school on autopilot, and rode her bike through streets still slick with overnight frost. She half expected Cameron to be waiting for her at her locker, ready to make a scene, ready to get her expelled. He wasn't there. In fact, he wasn't at school at all. Neither were Marcus, Tyler, or the other 2 from last night. When Quinlan slid into her seat in chemistry, Dashiell leaned over and whispered, "Did you hear?" Cameron and a bunch of guys got into some kind of fight last night. All of them called in sick today. "A fight?" Quinlan asked carefully. "That's the rumor. Someone saw Cameron with a busted nose this morning, but he wouldn't say what happened. Peterson's trying to figure it out." Quinlan's stomach dropped. "What does Peterson think?" "Nobody knows, but Cameron's dad apparently called the school this morning, super pissed off. The football coach is involved now. It's a whole thing. Mr. Richardson started class before Quinlan could ask more questions. She copied notes without processing them, her mind racing through scenarios. Would Cameron admit what happened? Would he have to explain why he'd cornered her alone after dark? Would he risk exposing himself and his friends to get back at her? Lunch arrived with no summons to the office. Quinlan sat with her usual group, picking at her sandwich, only half listening to the conversation. Keiko noticed her distraction. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "You seem stressed." "Just tired," Quinlan lied. "Didn't sleep well." "Cameron's absence is making you nervous," Dashiell observed. It wasn't a question. "I'm fine." "You keep saying that," Keiko said, "but you're clearly not." Quinlan set down her sandwich, appetite gone. "Can we talk about something else?" "Anything else?" They obliged, moving on to safer topics, but Quinlan could feel their concern like weight pressing down on her. She'd earned their friendship under false pretenses. They thought they knew her, quiet, passive, maybe a little shy but otherwise normal. They didn't know she'd put 3 people on the ground in under 10 seconds last night. They didn't know she could do far worse if she wanted to. The day ended without incident. Quinlan went home, did her homework, ate dinner alone, and went to bed early, still waiting for consequences. Saturday morning, her phone rang. Unknown number. Quinlan almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello? This is Vice Principal Peterson. Is this Quinlan Reese?" Her blood turned to ice. "Yes, sir. I need you to come into school Monday morning, first thing, 8 a.m., my office. We need to discuss an incident that occurred Thursday night involving you and several other students." "Yes, sir," Quinlan said again, her voice hollow. "I'll be there." "Good. Bring a parent or guardian if possible." He hung up. Quinlan sat on her bed, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to dead air. It was over. Whatever fragile peace she'd managed to build, whatever tentative friendship she'd started to form, whatever chance she'd had at normal, it was over. She should have known better than to hope. Sunday passed in a haze. Aunt Claire was working a double again, so Quinlan spent the day alone in the apartment, alternating between pacing her room and staring at her phone. Dashiell texted twice, asking if she wanted to hang out. Keiko sent a meme that was probably funny, but Quinlan couldn't make herself laugh. She didn't respond to either of them. What was the point? After tomorrow, they'd know the truth. They'd know what she was. Monday morning arrived too fast and too slow. Quinlan told Aunt Claire about the meeting during a rushed breakfast. "What incident?" Claire demanded, immediately worried. "What happened? Are you in trouble?" "I don't know," Quinlan said honestly, "but Peterson wants you there." "I'm on shift at 9, Claire said, torn. "I can't just call out. Can we reschedule? I don't think that's how this works." Claire's expressions cycled through frustration, guilt, and resignation. Okay, I'll come. I'll tell them I have a family emergency. But Quinn, you need to tell me what this is about." "Thursday night, Cameron and some other guys cornered me downtown. There was a confrontation. That's all I know." "Did they hurt you?" Claire's voice rose. "Did they touch you?" "No. I'm fine. Just, please, can we go? We can't be late." They drove to school in Claire's beat-up Honda, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Quinlan stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by, wondering if this would be the last time she made this trip. Peterson's office was in the administrative wing, a small space dominated by a large desk and uncomfortable chairs. The vice principal was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, with iron-grey hair and deep lines around his eyes. He gestured for Quinlan and Claire to sit. "Thank you for coming," Peterson said formally. "Miss Reese, I presume?" "Yes," Claire said. "Can you tell me what this is about?" "Thursday night, there was an altercation between your niece and 5 other students. All 5 of those students sustained injuries. Cameron Vance has a broken nose. Marcus Delgado has bruised ribs. Tyler Brennan has a contusion on his torso. The other 2 have minor cuts and bruises." 5 students? Claire turned to Quinlan, shocked. 5 students attacked you? "According to witness statements and security footage from nearby businesses," Peterson continued, "the 5 students in question approached Quinlan outside the public library. There was a verbal confrontation. Then physical contact was initiated by Cameron Vance. What happened next is less clear, but all 5 students ended up injured, and Quinlan appears to have been entirely unharmed." "So my niece was attacked and defended herself," Claire said, her voice sharp with protective anger. "And you're treating her like she did something wrong." "I'm trying to understand what happened," Peterson said, "because 5 trained athletes, all significantly larger than Quinlan, all ended up hurt while she walked away without a scratch. That raises questions." "Questions like what?" Quinlan asked quietly. Peterson turned his attention to her. "Questions like how you managed to defend yourself against 5 people. Questions like what training you have. Questions like whether you used excessive force." "It was 5 against 1, Claire interjected. "How could she possibly use excessive force?" "I've seen the medical reports," Peterson said. "Cameron's nose was broken in a way that suggests a controlled strike or throw. The injuries suggest someone with training, skill, and experience in combat. So I'm going to ask you directly, Quinlan. What's your background?" Quinlan felt the walls closing in. This was it. The moment of truth. She could lie, probably should lie, but what was the point? They'd figure it out eventually. "I trained in martial arts for several years," she said finally. "Brazilian jiu-jitsu primarily, some boxing and Muay Thai. I was good at it." "How good?" Peterson asked. "I competed." "Won tournaments. I was ranked in my state." Claire was staring at her, shocked. "You never told me that. Ray never mentioned. Uncle Ray made me promise to stop," Quinlan said, "when I came to live with him. He said I needed to leave that life behind, focus on school, stay out of trouble. I promised I would, and I kept that promise for 3 years, until Thursday night." "Why didn't you tell anyone at school?" Peterson asked. "Why hide it?" "Because I didn't want this," Quinlan said, gesturing at the office, the meeting, the whole situation. "I didn't want people to know. I just wanted to be normal. I wanted to be left alone." "And Cameron Vance wouldn't leave you alone." Peterson said. It wasn't a question. No, sir. He and his friends have been targeting me since my first week here. Verbal harassment, physical intimidation, social media stalking. I reported some of it. Nothing changed. Thursday night they cornered me in a dark street and threatened me. I defended myself, that's all. Peterson leaned back in his chair, studying her. I've been reviewing reports of bullying incidents over the past month. Your name comes up repeatedly as the target. Several students, including Keiko Chen, have filed formal complaints on your behalf. I'll admit our response has been inadequate. So, what happens now? Claire asked. You punish my niece for protecting herself? No, Peterson said. Based on the evidence, witness statements, security footage, and the medical reports, it's clear that Quinlan acted in self-defense. She'll face no disciplinary action from the school. However, Cameron's parents are considering pressing charges for assault. Quinlan's heart sank. Of course they are. They claim you attacked their son unprovoked, Peterson continued. They're alleging that you're a violent individual with a history of fighting and that you lured Cameron and his friends into a confrontation. That's insane, Claire burst out. She was at the library. How is that luring anyone? I agree it's unlikely to hold up legally, Peterson said, especially given the pattern of harassment and the fact that 5 larger individuals approached one smaller individual in an isolated location. Any competent attorney would argue reasonable fear of imminent harm, but it will be messy, expensive, and stressful. So I need a lawyer, Quinlan said dully. You might. I've also contacted the police to file a report on your behalf regarding the harassment and the assault. They're investigating. But Quinlan, I need to be clear with you. Your life at this school is about to get very complicated. More complicated than it's been? Quinlan asked with a bitter laugh. The student body is going to find out what happened, Peterson said. Rumors are already spreading. By lunch today, everyone will know that you put 5 football players in the hospital. Some people will respect you, others will fear you, some will target you even more, trying to prove they're tougher. You need to be prepared for that. Quinlan nodded slowly. I understand. I'm also recommending counseling, Peterson added. The school has resources. I'm fine, Quinlan interrupted. You were attacked by 5 people, Peterson said firmly. You defended yourself, yes, but that doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic. Please, consider talking to someone. I'll think about it, Quinlan said, which was a lie. Peterson sighed but didn't push. Okay, for now you're free to return to class. I'll be monitoring the situation closely. If you experience any retaliation or further harassment, report it immediately. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And Quinlan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry we failed to protect you earlier. We should have done more. It was too little, too late, but Quinlan appreciated the sentiment. Thank you. Claire drove her back home so she could get her bike. The meeting had taken up the entire first period. In the car, Claire said, Ray trained you in martial arts? Yeah. His gym was his life. When I came to live with him, I was angry, messed up, getting into fights. He channeled all that aggression into training, gave me discipline, focus, purpose. I got good, really good. Too good, maybe. I started looking for fights, started thinking I was invincible. That's why he made me promise to stop. Why didn't he tell me? Claire asked quietly. Because it wasn't relevant anymore. I was done with that life. Or I thought I was. You defended yourself, Quinn. That's not the same as looking for fights, isn't it? I could have run. I could have screamed for help. I could have done a dozen things that didn't involve putting people in the hospital. 5 against 1, Claire repeated. In the dark. You did what you had to do to stay safe. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for that. Quinlan wanted to believe her. She really did. She got to school just before 3rd period. The hallways were crowded with students transitioning between classes, and the moment Quinlan walked through the entrance, she felt the shift in atmosphere. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Eyes followed her. They knew. Quinlan kept her head up, her expression neutral, and walked to her locker. The crowd parted around her like she was radioactive. She could hear the whispers. "That's her. No way she took down Cameron. Did you see his nose? I heard she's like a black belt or something. She's been hiding it this whole time." She reached her locker, worked the combination, and felt someone approach behind her. She turned, already tensing, and found Keiko and Dashiell. Keiko's expression was complicated, concern mixed with something that might have been awe. Dashiell just looked worried. "So," Keiko said, "apparently you're a secret badass." "Apparently," Quinlan said. "Why didn't you tell us?" Dashiell asked. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I didn't want this." Quinlan gestured at the staring students, the whispers, the sudden notoriety. "I wanted to be nobody. I wanted people to leave me alone." "But you weren't nobody," Keiko said. "You were pretending to be helpless when you weren't." "I wasn't pretending. I was trying not to be who I used to be. There's a difference." "Is there?" Keiko's tone was sharper than Quinlan had ever heard it. "Because from where I'm standing, you let Cameron torture you for weeks when you could have stopped him any time. You let him make you miserable. You let him make all of us worry about you. And for what? Some promise to a dead guy." "Keiko," Dashiell said warningly, but the words hit like a physical blow. Quinlan felt her eyes sting, her throat tighten. "He wasn't just some dead guy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He saved my life, and yes, I made him a promise, because I was violent and angry and out of control, and he gave me a chance to be better, so excuse me for trying to honor that." Keiko's expression softened immediately. "God, I'm sorry. That was shitty of me. I hate that you had to go through all of this alone. We could have helped." "You did help," Quinlan said. "You have been helping. You've been the only good thing about this place." The warning bell rang. Students began moving toward classrooms, though many still shot glances at Quinlan as they passed. Dashiell shifted his backpack. "We're okay, right?" he asked. "You and me? You and all of us? Because I don't care what rumors are going around or what happened Thursday night. You're still you and we're still friends." Quinlan felt her eyes burning again. "Yeah," she managed. "We're okay. Good. Because I was worried you'd think we'd bail on you or something, which would be stupid. You're stuck with us now." "So stuck," Keiko agreed. "Like, aggressively stuck. You can't escape." Despite everything, Quinlan smiled. "Okay." Third period was history, which Quinlan shared with none of her friends but several football players. She walked into the room and felt every eye turned toward her. The football players huddled in the back row looked at her with undisguised hostility. The teacher, Mr. Barnes, cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Reese," he said, "please, take your seat." Quinlan sat in her usual desk near the middle. The girl who normally sat next to her, Ashley something, had moved to a different seat. Everyone had moved, actually, leaving a bubble of empty desks around Quinlan like she was contagious. Mr. Barnes started his lecture on the Civil War, but Quinlan couldn't focus. She could feel the weight of attention, of judgment, of fear. This was what she'd been trying to avoid. This was why she'd hidden, why she'd promised Uncle Ray she'd never fight again. Because once people knew what you were capable of, they never looked at you the same way. Lunch was an exercise in social navigation. Quinlan walked into the cafeteria and the noise level dropped noticeably. She kept her eyes forward, heading for the windows table where Keiko and the others were already gathered. "Oh, good, you came," Priya said as Quinlan sat down. "I was worried you'd hide in the library." "Thought about it," Quinlan admitted. "Understandable," Jordan said. "You're like the most talked-about person in school right now. It's wild." Please tell me you're not going to interrogate me about it, Quinlan said. We're not, Marcus said, except I do have one question. Did you really break Cameron's nose with one move? Marcus, Keiko said warningly. What? I'm curious. That's advanced technique. I've been taking Krav Maga for 2 years and I couldn't do that. It wasn't that impressive, Quinlan muttered. He walked into it more than anything. Still, Marcus said admiringly, 5 guys. You're like an action movie protagonist. I'm really not. They let it drop after that, moving on to other topics, but Quinlan could tell they were all thinking about it, wondering about her, reassessing who they thought she was. She was picking at her sandwich when someone slammed their lunch tray down at the table next to theirs. Quinlan looked up to see one of Cameron's teammates, Bryce something, a linebacker, glaring at her. You think you're tough? He said loudly. You think you're some kind of badass? Cameron's in the hospital because of you. Cameron's in the hospital because he and 4 other guys cornered me in the dark and threatened me, Quinlan said calmly. I defended myself. Bullshit. You attacked him. You're violent. You're dangerous. Quinlan felt her friends tense around her, ready to intervene. She stood slowly, aware that everyone in the cafeteria was watching now. I'm not going to argue with you, she said. If you have a problem with me, take it up with Peterson. Maybe I'll take it up with you, Bryce said, stepping closer. See how tough you really are when you're not ambushing people. Ambushing? Quinlan felt something cold settle in her chest. Is that really the story you're going with? 5 against 1 and I was the ambusher? You hide what you can do. You pretend to be weak. That's coward shit. I tried to avoid conflict, Quinlan said, her voice steady despite the anger building behind her ribs. I tried to stay out of everyone's way. I tried to be invisible. Your friends wouldn't let me. They made my life hell for weeks, and when they finally pushed me too far, I defended myself. That's not being a coward. That's being someone who was trying really damn hard not to hurt anyone. But you did hurt people, Bryce shot back. That's what you do. You're a fighter, a violent... Enough. The voice came from behind Bryce. Everyone turned to see Coach Williams, the football coach, standing with his arms crossed. Bryce, sit down and eat your lunch. Ms. Reese, same to you. This discussion is over. But Coach... Now, Bryce. Bryce glared at Quinlan for a long moment, then grabbed his tray and stalked away. Coach Williams lingered, looking at Quinlan with an expression she couldn't quite read. You okay? He asked. Fine, Quinlan said automatically. Peterson briefed me on what happened. For what it's worth, I'm sorry my players put you in that position. Their behavior is unacceptable and they'll face consequences. Thank you, Quinlan said, surprised. Coach Williams nodded and walked away. Quinlan sat back down, aware that her hands were shaking slightly. Dashiell reached over and squeezed her shoulder. You handled that really well, he said quietly. I wanted to hit him, Quinlan admitted, so badly. But you didn't. That's what matters. The rest of lunch passed without incident, but the atmosphere in the cafeteria had shifted. Some students looked at Quinlan with respect, others with fear, still others with hostility. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer safe in anonymity. She was exposed, and she had no idea how to navigate this new reality. The week that followed was surreal. Quinlan went to classes, did her homework, ate lunch with her friends, and tried to pretend that everything was normal while living in a fishbowl of constant attention. Younger students whispered and pointed. Teachers treated her with nervous caution. The football team avoided her entirely, though she occasionally caught them glaring from across hallways. Cameron didn't return to school that week. Neither did Marcus Delgado or Tyler. Rumors said Cameron's parents were meeting with lawyers, that they were planning to sue, that they wanted Quinlan expelled or arrested or both. Quinlan tried not to think about it. Tried to focus on the things she could control, her grades, her friendships, the small routines that gave structure to her days. But she couldn't stop thinking about that Thursday night, couldn't stop replaying the moment her body had taken over, 3 years of muscle memory flooding back in an instant. Couldn't stop wondering if Uncle Ray would be disappointed in her, or if maybe, just maybe, he'd understand. On Friday afternoon, Dashiell caught up with her after last period. "Hey, you want to come to my place this weekend? We could watch movies, order pizza, just hang out, no pressure, no drama." Quinlan hesitated. "Are you sure? I'm kind of a walking controversy right now." "So, you're also my friend. Come on, it'll be fun. I'll even let you pick the movies." "Dangerous offer. I have weird taste." "I'm willing to risk it." Quinlan found herself smiling. "Okay, yeah, I'd like that." Saturday afternoon found Quinlan standing outside a modest 2-story house in a tree-lined neighborhood significantly nicer than Riverside Terrace. She'd never been to a friend's house before, not in her new life anyway. Old Quinlan had friends, but they were training partners and competitors, not people she spent casual time with. She rang the doorbell. Dashiell answered, grinning. "Welcome to Casa Dashiell. Come in, meet the chaos." The chaos turned out to be 2 younger sisters, twins who looked about 13, currently arguing over which streaming service had the better interface. Their mother, a warm-faced woman with the same grey eyes as Dashiell, appeared from the kitchen. "You must be Quinlan," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I've heard so much about you." "I'm Rebecca. Can I get you anything? Water? Soda?" "Water's fine, thank you," Quinlan said, feeling awkward. "Ignore the twins," Dashiell said. "They're permanently in debate mode. Come on, basement's this way." He led her downstairs to a finished basement that had clearly been claimed as teenage territory. A large TV, a worn couch, movie posters on the walls, shelves of books and comics. It was comfortable, lived in, exactly the kind of space Quinlan had never had. They settled onto the couch with drinks and a bowl of popcorn. "So," Dashiell said, "movie preference? Comedy, horror, action, drama?" "You pick," Quinlan said. "I'm easy." "Dangerous words." "I'm going with my favorite, which is probably going to seem weird." He pulled up an old film, something from the 80s about a kid and a robot. "It's corny, but it's comforting." "Comforting is good," Quinlan said. They watched in companionable silence, making occasional comments about plot holes or especially dated special effects. It was easy, relaxed, the kind of normal interaction Quinlan had been craving. Halfway through the movie, Dashiell asked, "Can I ask you something?" "About Thursday night." Quinlan tensed. "I guess." "Do you regret it? Defending yourself?" "I regret breaking my promise," Quinlan said carefully. "I regret that it came to that. But do I regret not letting them hurt me? No." "Good. Because you shouldn't. You did what you had to do." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it's true." Dashiell paused. "Can I ask something else?" "Sure. Why martial arts? What got you into it?" Quinlan was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much to share. "I was angry," she said finally. "When I was younger, I was so angry all the time. At my parents for dying, at the system for failing me, at the world for being unfair. I got into fights at school, got into trouble. That's when I went to live with Uncle Ray. He ran a gym and he saw all that rage I was carrying, and he gave me a way to channel it. Taught me discipline, control, respect. Taught me that strength isn't about dominating people, it's about controlling yourself." Sounds like he was a good guy. The best. "When he died, I promised him I'd use everything he taught me to be better, to not be the angry kid looking for fights anymore, and I kept that promise for 3 years until 5 assholes pushed you past your limit," Dashiell finished. "That's not your fault. That's not you breaking a promise. That's you surviving." Quinlan felt her throat tighten. "I wish Uncle Ray could have known that." "I think he did," Dashiell said quietly. "I think he knew exactly who you were, and he trusted you to figure out how to use your strength the right way." which you did. You defended yourself without seriously hurting anyone. You showed restraint even when you were scared and angry. That's what he taught you, right? Yeah, Quinlan whispered. Yeah, that's what he taught me. They finished the movie in comfortable silence. When it ended, Dashiell put on another one, an action comedy this time, and they argued good-naturedly about plot logic and character choices. Rebecca called them up for pizza around 6, and they ate with the family, the twins interrogating Quinlan about school and life, and whether she thought their brother was embarrassing. Yes, but in a good way. It was the most normal, the most comfortable Quinlan had felt in months, maybe years. When she left that evening, pedaling home through the twilight, she felt something unfamiliar, hope. Maybe things could be okay. Maybe she could have this. Friends, normalcy, a life that wasn't defined by violence or fear or the weight of impossible promises. Maybe she could be both, the girl who knew how to fight and the girl who chose peace whenever possible. Monday morning, Cameron Vance returned to school. Quinlan saw him in the hallway before first period, and the change was startling. His nose was bandaged, still healing from the break. But it wasn't the physical injury that made the difference, it was his whole demeanor. The cocky swagger was gone. The predatory confidence had evaporated. He moved through the hallway quietly, eyes down, avoiding contact with everyone. He saw Quinlan and froze. For a long moment, they just looked at each other across the crowded hallway. Quinlan kept her expression neutral, waiting for him to say something, do something, continue the war they'd been fighting. Instead, Cameron looked away first and walked in a different direction. Keiko appeared at Quinlan's elbow. Wow, I've never seen Cameron back down from anything. Maybe he learned something, Quinlan said, though she didn't quite believe it herself. First period passed without incident. Second period, third period. Lunch. All quiet. Cameron ate with his remaining friends, a smaller group than before, subdued and wary. Other students watched him with the same curiosity they'd watched Quinlan with last week, fascinated by the fall of someone who'd seemed untouchable. It was fifth period chemistry when things finally came to a head. Quinlan walked into class to find Cameron already there, sitting in his usual seat near the front. Tyler was beside him, still sporting a bruise on his jaw. The rest of the class was watching them both, with barely concealed interest, waiting for drama. Quinlan took her seat in the back next to Dashiell. Mr. Richardson started class, launching into a lecture about chemical bonds. But everyone was too distracted to pay attention. The tension in the room was palpable. 20 minutes into class, Cameron raised his hand. Mr. Richardson? Can I go to the bathroom? Make it quick, Richardson said absently, focused on his whiteboard equation. Cameron stood and walked toward the back of the room where the door was. As he passed Quinlan's desk, he dropped something, a folded piece of paper. It fell right next to her bag. Quinlan looked at it, then at Cameron's retreating back. He didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge her, just walked out. Dashiell leaned over. What's that? I don't know. Quinlan picked up the paper, unfolded it under her desk, read the handwritten message. I know you're not going to believe this, but I'm sorry. What we did was wrong. What I did was wrong. My dad's pushing me to press charges, but I told him no. You were defending yourself. I'm sorry for all of it. --CV-. Quinlan read it twice, then passed it to Dashiell. He read it, eyebrows rising. Didn't expect that. Me neither, Quinlan admitted quietly. When class ended, Quinlan caught up with Cameron in the hallway. Hey. He turned, visibly nervous. Hey. I got your note. Oh, yeah. Cameron shifted his backpack, not meeting her eyes. I meant it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Why? Quinlan asked. Why did you target me? What did I ever do to you? Cameron was quiet for a long moment. Honestly? You didn't do anything. That's part of why it was so easy. You were new, you were quiet, you didn't have friends or allies, you were an easy target. And I was—" He stopped, struggling for words. "My dad puts a lot of pressure on me. To perform, to be the best, to dominate. He says that's what winners do. They establish hierarchy, they prove superiority, and I guess I took that out on you." "That's a bullshit excuse," Quinlan said flatly. "I know, it is. There's no good excuse. I was an asshole, a bully. I liked feeling powerful, liked having control over someone. And then Thursday night, you took all that away in about 10 seconds. Cameron finally met her eyes. "You could have really hurt me. You could have done serious damage, but you didn't. You just defended yourself and left. That's why I told my dad I won't press charges. Because I know I was in the wrong, and I know you were just trying to stay safe." Quinlan studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or lies. She saw only exhaustion and what might have been genuine remorse. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I try to be less of an asshole," Cameron said. "I'm in counseling, court-mandated. My parents are making me do community service. Coach benched me for the rest of the season, and I have to live with everyone knowing I got my ass kicked by someone half my size." "Not half," Quinlan corrected. "Maybe 2/3. To her surprise, Cameron laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Fair. Look, I don't expect us to be friends or anything, but I want you to know that I'm done. No more harassment, no more bullshit. You can just exist here without me making your life hell." "Okay," Quinlan said. "I can accept that." Cameron nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're pretty tough. Not just because you can fight, but because you kept taking all that shit for weeks without breaking. That's actually tougher than anything I've ever done." He walked away before Quinlan could respond. She stood in the emptying hallway, trying to process what had just happened. An apology from Cameron Vance, actual consequences, a chance at something resembling peace. She didn't trust it entirely. People didn't change that quickly, that thoroughly. But it was something, a start maybe. The following weeks proved Cameron's apology wasn't just empty words. He kept his distance, stayed quiet, didn't engage when his remaining friends tried to rile him up about Quinlan. Other students noticed. The football team slowly backed off their hostile posturing. The school atmosphere shifted from tense anticipation of conflict to cautious acceptance of a new status quo. Quinlan found herself with an unexpected reputation. Some students looked at her with respect, not for her fighting ability, but for how she'd handled the entire situation. She'd been bullied, she'd defended herself, and she'd shown restraint when she could have done much worse. That combination, apparently, was admirable. Others were afraid of her. They gave her wide berth in hallways, avoided partner assignments with her, whispered nervously when she passed. Quinlan hated that more than the bullying in some ways. Fear was isolation of a different kind. But she had her friends. Keiko, Dashiell, and the rest of their group stuck close, including her in everything, normalizing her presence, treating her like a person instead of a threat or a spectacle. They were her anchor. One afternoon in late October, Quinlan was in the library working on a history paper when Dashiell slid into the seat across from her. "So I have a question," he said. "Hit me." "Homecoming is in 2 weeks. Quinlan looked up from her laptop. "Is that the question?" "No, smartass. The question is, would you want to go, with me, as like a date?" Quinlan felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "A date? Yeah, you know, that thing where two people who like each other dress up and dance awkwardly and take pictures." "I've heard of the concept," Quinlan said, trying to keep her voice light. "I'm just surprised you'd want to go with the school's resident scary person." "You're not scary. You're competent, which some people find threatening, but I happen to find it attractive." Quinlan felt her face heat. "Oh, so? Dashiell was trying to look casual, but his fingers were tapping nervously on the table. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," Quinlan said. "Definitely a yes." His smile was brilliant. "Excellent. Fair warning, I'm a terrible dancer, like truly bad. You might have to defend me from embarrassment." "I think I can manage that." They grinned at each other like idiots until someone shushed them from across the library. The 2 weeks leading up to homecoming passed in a blur of normal school life, punctuated by the surreal excitement of having a date. Keiko helped Quinlan shop for a dress, a simple dark blue one that was nice without being over the top. Aunt Claire actually cried when Quinlan tried it on at home, which was both touching and mortifying. The night of homecoming, Dashiell picked her up at Riverside Terrace in his mom's sedan. He was wearing a button-down and slacks, his hair actually styled for once, and he looked good enough that Quinlan forgot how to speak for a full 10 seconds. "You look amazing," he said when he found his voice. "You too," Quinlan managed. They drove to school with the radio playing, singing along badly to songs they barely knew. The gymnasium had been transformed with streamers and lights and a DJ setup that was already pumping bass when they arrived. Students clustered in groups around the edges of the dance floor, some already dancing, most still working up the courage. Keiko found them immediately, pulling them over to where the rest of their friend group had claimed a corner. "You made it! And you both look fantastic. Has anyone told you you look fantastic? Because you do." "You might have mentioned it," Dashiell said dryly. They danced, badly, enthusiastically, without self-consciousness. Quinlan, who could move with precision and control in a fight, discovered she had zero sense of rhythm when it came to dancing. It didn't matter. Everyone was bad. That was the point. Cameron was there, Quinlan noticed. He stayed on the opposite side of the gym with a small group, looking uncomfortable in his formal clothes. He caught Quinlan's eye once across the room, nodded slightly. She nodded back. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. They both had to exist in this space, this school, this small world. They could at least do it civilly. A slow song came on, inevitable, cliché, perfect. Dashiell offered his hand. "May I have this dance, scary lady?" "Always with the compliments," Quinlan said, but she took his hand. They swayed together, not quite in time with the music, close enough that Quinlan could feel his heartbeat. He smelled like cologne and nervous sweat and something else that was just him. "This is nice," he said quietly. "Yeah," Quinlan agreed. "It really is." "I'm glad you came to Lincoln," Dashiell continued, "even though it's been rough. Even though you've had to deal with so much crap. I'm glad you're here." "Me too," Quinlan realized. "I didn't think I would be, but I am." They danced through the rest of the song and into the next one, the gym lights casting everything in shades of blue and gold, the music too loud and the decorations too cheesy, and everything absolutely perfect. Later that night, Dashiell drove her home and walked her to the door of her apartment building. The stairwell was harsh fluorescent light and chipped paint, a stark contrast to the transformed gymnasium, but somehow it didn't matter. "I had a really good time," Quinlan said. "Me too, we should do it again. The spending time together part, not necessarily the bad dancing part. I make no promises about my dancing improving." Dashiell smiled. "I'm okay with that." He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her cheek. Quick, soft, respectful. "Good night, Quinlan." "Good night, Dash." She watched him walk back to his car, waited until he pulled out of the parking lot, then climbed the stairs to her apartment. Aunt Claire was still up, pretending to watch TV, but clearly waiting up. "How was it?" she asked eagerly. "It was good," Quinlan said. "Really good." Claire's smile was warm. "I'm glad. You deserve good things, Quinn." In her room, Quinlan changed out of the dress and hung it carefully in her closet. She caught sight of the gym bag, still tucked behind the box, and paused. For 3 years, she'd seen it as a symbol of failure, of the person she was trying not to be, but maybe she'd been looking at it wrong. Maybe it wasn't about being one thing or the other, the fighter or the peaceful girl. Maybe she could be both. Maybe she could carry all parts of herself, choose when and how to use them, be strong without being violent, be gentle without being weak. She pulled out the bag, unzipped it, and looked at the contents. Her old guy, the belt, the wraps, pieces of who she'd been. She ran her fingers over the worn fabric, remembering Uncle Ray's voice. Strength is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. The mark of a true martial artist is control. Over your body, your emotions, your choices. She'd walked away for 3 years, and when she finally had to fight, she'd shown control. She hadn't brutalized her attackers. She'd defended herself and stopped. That was what Uncle Ray had taught her. That was honoring his legacy, not breaking her promise. Quinlan closed the bag and put it back in the closet. She'd keep it there, not hidden in shame, but stored as a reminder. She knew how to fight, and she knew how to choose peace. Both were strengths. November brought cold rain and early darkness. The school year settled into routine. Quinlan's notoriety faded as new dramas captured the student body's attention. Cameron kept his word, staying distant but civil. The football team finished their season with a mediocre record. Homecoming became a memory of one good night among many. Quinlan's relationship with Dashiell grew slowly, steadily. They studied together, ate lunch together, spent Saturdays at his house or riding bikes around town. It was easy, comfortable, exactly what teenage relationships should be, and so rarely are. She was walking to her locker one afternoon in mid-November when she saw a familiar scene. A larger student, some sophomore she didn't know, had cornered a smaller student, clearly harassing them. Other students walked past, not intervening. 3 months ago, Quinlan would have kept walking too, would have kept her head down, stayed invisible, minded her own business, but 3 months ago was a different lifetime. "Hey," Quinlan said, approaching them. "Is there a problem here?" The larger student turned, saw her, and his expression shifted from aggressive to wary. "No problem, just talking." Didn't look like talking. Quinlan looked at the smaller student, a girl with glasses and a terrified expression. "You okay?" The girl nodded mutely. "Then maybe find somewhere else to do your talking," Quinlan suggested to the bully, her voice level but firm. "Somewhere public, with other people around." The larger student looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Quinlan's posture, or maybe something in her reputation, made him reconsider. "Whatever," he muttered, and walked away. The smaller girl let out a shaky breath. "Thank you." "I didn't know what to do." "Tell a teacher," Quinlan said. "Tell a friend. Tell someone. Don't just endure it. And if it happens again and you need backup, find me. I'm Quinlan. I'm usually at the windows table at lunch." "I'm Sage," the girl said. "Thanks, really." Quinlan watched her hurry away, then continued to her locker. She felt eyes on her, other students who'd witnessed the interaction. Some looked approving, others looked thoughtful, like maybe they'd been inspired to intervene next time they saw something wrong. Ripples. That's what Uncle Ray used to say. One person's courage creates ripples that spread outward, inspiring others. Maybe that was the real promise she needed to keep. Not to never fight, but to use her strength wisely, to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves, to break the cycles of silence and fear that let bullies thrive. December arrived with the first real snow. Exams loomed. The semester was ending, and Quinlan found herself thinking about the past 4 months with something like wonder. She'd survived bullying, defended herself, made real friends, found a relationship that made her happy, and started to integrate all the disparate parts of herself into something whole. On the last day before winter break, Peterson called her to his office. Quinlan went with some trepidation, wondering what she'd done wrong, but his expression was friendly when she arrived. "Sit down, Quinlan. I wanted to check in, see how things are going." Fine, sir. Good, actually. I'm glad to hear that. I've been monitoring the situation with Cameron and his friends. No further incidents? No, sir. It's been quiet. Good. I also wanted to tell you that I've heard from multiple students that you've been intervening when you see bullying, stepping in, supporting targeted students, making sure they know how to get help. I just do what I can, Quinlan said. It's making a difference. We've seen a reduction in reported bullying incidents, and when I ask students why, your name keeps coming up. You're setting an example. Quinlan felt her face heat. I'm just trying to do what's right. That's exactly what we need more students to do. Keep it up. And Quinlan, I know the beginning of this year was rough for you. I know we failed you in many ways, but I hope you know that you've become a valued member of our school community. We're lucky to have you. Thank you, sir. Walking out of the office, Quinlan felt something settle in her chest. Belonging. Purpose. The sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That evening, Quinlan's friend group gathered at Dashiell's house for a holiday movie marathon. They sprawled across the basement couch and floor, arguing about which movies counted as Christmas movies, eating too much junk food, laughing at stupid jokes. At one point, Keiko raised her soda can in a toast. To surviving our first semester with Quinlan, who we thought was a quiet mouse but turned out to be a secret badass who fights bullies and protects the vulnerable. I hate that nickname, Quinlan said. Which one? Mouse or badass? Mouse. Badass I can live with. They all laughed. Dashiell squeezed her hand. To Quinlan, he said, who's tough in all the ways that actually matter. They clinked their various drinks together. The movie played on, something with elves and too much CGI. Snow fell outside the basement windows, and Quinlan sat surrounded by friends, hand in Dashiell's, and felt genuinely happy for the first time in years. The semester ended with decent grades and winter break plans. Quinlan spent Christmas with Aunt Claire, and they actually talked, really talked, for the first time since she'd moved in. Claire opened up about Uncle Ray, about their childhood, about how proud he'd been of Quinlan in his final weeks. He knew you'd be okay, Claire said. He told me before he died. He said you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for, and that you'd find your way. Quinlan felt tears prick her eyes. I hope I am. Finding my way, I mean. You are, honey. You really are. New Year's Eve, Keiko threw a party. Nothing wild, just their friend group, some board games, countdown at midnight. Quinlan and Dashiell sat together on the couch as the final seconds of the year ticked away, and when midnight hit and everyone was hugging and cheering, he kissed her properly for the first time. Happy New Year, he said when they broke apart. Happy New Year, Quinlan echoed. Second semester started with a fresh slate. Cameron had transferred to a private school, his parents' decision apparently, wanting a fresh start. Marcus and Tyler remained but were subdued, keeping to themselves. The football team had new leadership, new dynamics. And Quinlan was just another student at Lincoln High, not the bullied new girl, not the secret fighter. Just Quinlan, smart, funny, sometimes sarcastic, part of a solid friend group, dating a boy she really liked, intervening when she saw injustice. One afternoon in February, she was studying in the library when she got a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Cameron. I know it's weird to text, but I wanted you to know I got into counseling for real, not court-mandated, real therapy, and I'm working on understanding why I did what I did. I wanted to say thanks for not pressing charges, for showing restraint, for giving me a chance to be better. I don't expect a response, just wanted you to know. -CV. Quinlan read it twice, then typed back, good luck, I mean that. His response came a minute later. Thanks, you too. She deleted the conversation and went back to her homework. Some stories didn't have neat endings. Some people remained mostly strangers even after significant conflicts, and that was okay. Not everything needed resolution or closure. Some things just needed to be survived and learned from. March brought early spring, and the kind of soft rain that made everything smell green and new. Quinlan was walking home from school, pushing her bike because the gears were acting up, when she passed the public library, where everything had changed back in September. She stopped, looking at the spot where she'd been cornered, where she'd finally fought back, where she'd broken her promise and kept it simultaneously. The memory didn't hurt the way it used to. It was just something that had happened, something that had shaped her but didn't define her. Her phone buzzed. Dashiell. Want to come over? Mom made cookies and says I'm not allowed to eat them all myself. Quinlan smiled and typed back, on my way. She got on her bike, the gears cooperating suddenly, and pedaled toward Dashiell's house, toward friendship and warmth and the normal teenage life she'd fought so hard to have. The sun was breaking through the clouds, painting the wet streets in gold. And Quinlan Reese, who'd been quiet and scared and trying so hard to be invisible, who'd been bullied and broken and forced to defend herself, who'd learned to integrate all the parts of herself into something whole, she rode through the spring afternoon and felt genuinely at peace. She was tough, but not because she could fight, not because she'd defended herself, not because she'd survived bullying and come out the other side. She was tough because she'd learned when to fight and when to show mercy, because she'd kept her promise even when it was impossible and broke it only when absolutely necessary, because she'd chosen peace whenever possible and violence only when there was no other option, because she'd turned her trauma into purpose, using her experience to protect others, to break cycles of cruelty, to stand up for those who needed someone to stand with them. That was real strength. That was what Uncle Ray had been trying to teach her all along, and as Quinlan pedaled through the sunshine toward an afternoon of cookies and friends and the ordinary magic of teenage life, she knew he'd be proud of the person she'd become. Not the fighter who'd won tournaments, not the victim who'd endured harassment, not the scared girl trying to disappear, but Quinlan, whole, complicated, strong in all the ways that mattered, someone who knew how to fight and chose peace, someone who'd been knocked down and gotten back up, someone who'd learned that the highest form of strength was knowing when to show restraint, when to extend mercy, when to forgive without forgetting. She was tough, but more importantly, she was kind, brave, human. And that, she thought as she turned onto Dashiell Street, was exactly who she wanted to be. The weight of silence had lifted. The promise had been both kept and broken, honored in spirit, if not in letter. And Quinlan Reese, who they'd called Mouse and Scaredy-Cat and Wallflower, who they'd underestimated and dismissed and pushed too far, had proven something more important than physical toughness. She'd proven that true strength includes knowing when not to fight. That courage isn't about dominating others, but about defending what's right. That mercy is harder than vengeance and infinitely more powerful. That you can carry violence inside you without letting it define you, can know how to hurt people without choosing to do so, can be dangerous without being cruel. She'd proven that the best victories are the ones where nobody has to lose their humanity. And she'd proven, most importantly, that you can be broken and rebuilt, scared and brave, quiet and fierce, gentle and deadly, all at the same time. That they call her tough girl sarcastically had become a truth, but not in the way anyone expected. Quinlan was tough enough to show restraint, tough enough to choose peace, tough enough to break cycles instead of continuing them, tough enough to be merciful when she had every right to be merciless. That was the toughest thing of all. And her one-liners, sparse, dry, perfectly timed, hit harder than her punches ever could, because they came from someone who'd learned that words could defend as effectively as fists, that confidence could shield as well as technique, that presence and purpose were their own kind of armor. She'd walked through hell and came out the other side not hardened, not broken, but tempered, stronger for the experience, wiser for the pain, better for having survived. And that was the real story, not about a girl who could fight, but about a girl who learned when not to. Not about violence, but about restraint. Not about domination, but about mercy. Not about being tough, but about being human. Quinlan Reese parked her bike in Dashiell's driveway, walked up to the door, and knocked. When he answered with flour on his cheek and a grin on his face, she smiled back and stepped inside, leaving the battles behind, choosing the simple joy of cookies and conversation, and a life she'd earned through courage and compassion both. The door closed behind her, and whatever came next, because there would always be something next, life was relentless that way, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else, with strength tempered by wisdom, with power balanced by restraint, with the knowledge that being tough meant being human first. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.